Will you be hatted up this weekend?
My wife has suggested I get hatted up. You know what I mean?
You haven't done it
I
in
think
the
it's
past?
time.
I've thought about it. Yeah, I need to look for a hat. Listen, I mean, there's not much to cover up, with what's going on with me. But my wife is currently hat shopping, to be honest with you.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. 4 men without hats: Jay Croucher, Lawrence Jackson, OG Ananobi superfan Connor Rogers, and Matthew Berry back from the Kentucky Derby. How was it, Matthew?
It was awesome. It was really, the Kentucky Derby is one of the all-time great events, especially to go to, hat or no hat. There's a lot of good hat watching. Once I saw that guy that walked by towards the end of that video with the horn on his hat, I couldn't do that anymore as well. Look, I'm the only one not hatted here. You see me there. There's our good friend Drew Dinsick at Whale Capper with the cowboy hat. Our producer, Steven DiAgostino.
To be fair, that's not really a hat from Steven.
Well,
it's not a Kentucky Derby
Either
hat.
way, I didn't.
Little ball cap.
It's like a Florida Panthers hat. Like it doesn't
He
count.
wears every day around here.
Yeah.
Which
Derby special.
Which he does at ease. And I'm the guy, balding though, I'm the guy that probably needs a hat the most. But I did not. Well,
find one you like, or?
I couldn't, and my wife had a hat that she really loved, and I didn't want to take away from my wife. The Derby is really about the women's hats and the women's outfits. Like you always
You didn't want to upstage her?
I did not want to upstage, which I often do when we're
Very
out.
selfless move by you.
Every time my wife and I are out, if you ever seen a picture of me and my wife, you'll see. I can't tell you how many times people are just staring at me and they completely ignore Beth. But which I don't get. I don't get. I get it. I'm the good-looking one in the relationship, but what are you going to do? Speaking of my wife, though, I will say my beautiful, amazing wife. It is her birthday today. Beth Berry.
Happy birthday,
Beth
Beth.
Berry. She drinks for free here in the Happy Hour bar. To be honest with you, she drinks for free pretty much in every bar she goes to. She has. We've been together for 17 years, and I have yet to actually see her pay for a drink. Everyone always loves buying Beth drinks. But the Happy Hour bar joins the list of places where my wife, my lovely wife, can drink for free. It's her birthday. Can't wait till we're done with the show and go back, celebrate with her and the kids. But, honey, I love you. I will see you soon. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Beth. All right, today we're going to get to your 1 through 50 rankings, Matthew. We're also going to give our best bets for Offensive Player of the Year in the final segment.
Yeah, this is the first time that we've had a chance to talk about the rankings since the NFL draft as well. All the rankings, of course, available for free on rotoworld.com, NBCsports.com. I'm company man. And what stuck out to you?
Okay, well, let's start off with 1 through 10. And headline, Jamar Chase, number 1, fresh off an elite Triple Crown season. Saquon Barkley, obviously a magnificent first year in Philadelphia. Bijan Robinson, who came on late and expected to continue that rise with Michael Penix under center. Jameer Gibbs, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, who we're going to get to, Ashton, Jeanty, Malik Nabers, Puka Nacua, my best friend, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, the sun god. Connor, I want to start off with CeeDee Lamb, who is the big, the big news of the past 24 hours affects him with George Pickens going to Dallas. How do you think that Pickens' arrival impacts CeeDee's outlook?
Kind of a net neutral, right? There's things you could pick at where it literally, George Pickens is going to have touchdown equity because he's a good red zone threat with his size. But he also should open up some space underneath for CeeDee Lamb, which if it's just CeeDee Lamb out there, that could be a problem. Safeties can cheat down on him. You could bracket him. So it comes out to be a net neutral to me. If anything, Jake Ferguson is the guy that loses targets in this situation because of Pickens' arrival. But overall, there's ways this helps CeeDee Lamb, very, very limited ways this hurts him. And obviously, I think Lawrence, for George Pickens, this has to feel like an exciting move for his prospects going forward in a contract year.
Yeah, definitely. You get an upgrade at quarterback. You get an upgrade in, let's say, offensive scheme where you're not so focused on running the ball like they did in Pittsburgh. You get Dak Prescott, who's just a couple of seasons removed from being a runner-up at MVP. Right. I think getting George Pickens could help him get back to that level. And I think both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens have the opportunity to play their best football. You saw a lot of times last year when Dallas's offense was so focused on CeeDee Lamb and it just didn't work from an overall standpoint. Adding George Pickens to that allows for the Dallas offense to be spread out a little more.
They're not going to run the ball. I mean, they've sort of, at least what we've seen so far through this offseason, all due respect to Javonte Williams, like this is going to be a pass-first offense with a pretty good quarterback in Dak Prescott. To your point, he adds George Pickens. It's a nice move for him. He moves up from 41 to 33 for me. To your point, I agree. Higher octane offense, in scoring position more often, better quarterback, obviously, as well. Over the last 2 years, Dak is actually 7th in the NFL in deep pass attempts per game, and that's with, the Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolberts of the world outside of CeeDee Lamb. And so obviously Pickens, a significant upgrade over the other complementary weapons outside of Lamb. Eights, I call him eights. A lot of people refer to him as CeeDee Lamb, but his friends call him eights. Everyone knows that. So my boy eights there. I think I'm with Connor here. I don't think this affects CeeDee Lamb. He's still going to be the focal point of this offense. But ultimately, it's an upgrade for Pickens. It's an upgrade for Dak Prescott, who moves up to QB 15 for me. Remember, this is a team that was top 8 in pass attempts per game each of the last 2 seasons. Brian Schottenheimer not calling plays, but I think it's going to be a very similar offense to what they ran under Mike McCarthy. Other side of the ball here, DK Metcalf now is the only game in town in Pittsburgh. Now, we still don't know. I guess Mason Rudolph is the default quarterback at the moment. We don't know if Aaron Rodgers. We think Aaron Rodgers is going to be there. But Metcalf will be the guy, the main guy for this Steelers offense. Last year in games where he had a target share of at least 25%, DK Metcalf averaged over 18 fantasy points per game. He's the only wide receiver on the Pittsburgh roster as we sit here today that had a target share above 13% in 2024. He's somebody that obviously is a big red zone threat as well. Now, it's going to be a slow pace of play. I think the quarterback play is going to be subpar, and they are going to be very run first. Think about what Drake London did under Arthur Smith's offense. Right. But DK Metcalf's like a different kind of dude. So I think he probably, whereas before we were like, you go to Pittsburgh, this is probably a downgrade. To me, he's now back where he was in Seattle, which is kind of like a borderline top 20 wide receiver who will need touchdowns to pay off in a given week. But he's going to pay off more often than not because he is sort of the only guy they got there.
You look at guys like Drake London and George Pickens, you know what they didn't have? Long-term contracts. That's what DK Metcalf has after they traded for him, right? And then let's just say Mason Rudolph is the quarterback, right? While, like you said, it could be subpar quarterback play, he was in Tennessee last year with Calvin Ridley, and Calvin Ridley was able to have some nice games. So you just got to have somebody throwing him the football. The way the rest of the game goes is that remains to be seen, but DK Metcalf should still be able to give you a return on investment.
I could not agree with that more, Lawrence. Too much, I think, often in fantasy, we make too much of a deal of like, the quarterback sucks.
Right, yes.
Right? I mean, like, who was throwing the ball to Brock Bowers last year? Did just fine, right?
Who's throwing the ball? Got Malik Nabers.
I was just about to say Malik Nabers.
Right. All of them did.
That was the argument against Malik Nabers last year. That was the argument against Brock Bowers. There's DK Metcalf has had some great quarterback play over the court, but he's also had some inconsistent quarterback play as well. And so, to your point, whether it's Mason Rudolph or Aaron Rodgers, they're going to be competent enough quarterback to get DK the ball. I think the target share will outmask any kind of the inefficiency.
I think what's interesting, the longer this goes, though, with Rodgers, he's just going to miss the Steelers' offseason activities entirely. And I know there's been Instagram posts of him working out with various Steelers, but that's different from an OTA period. And this was something that, the infamous Egypt trip that he missed the Jets, one of the Jets mini camps last week.
The infamous Egypt trip.
Yeah, that everybody was freaking out about. But at the end of the day, for an older quarterback on a new team, OTAs, there's not as much training camp as there used to be. I'm not saying it's a huge deal, but it is something where if he does just linger on with this and misses all of OTAs and then he's starting up at training camp from scratch, it's something to keep an eye on.
It feels like, but that's sort of his MO, right?
Which is a problem
whether it's the Egypt trip or the darkness retreat, right? The darkness retreat. He just does this. He's an older quarterback. He wants to enjoy his summer and just, eventually he'll get around to it.
If it's 2012 or even 2020 Aaron Rodgers where he was winning MVPs, then you let that slide.
Right.
Well, he's also in the same offensive system year after year.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
By the way, briefly going back to Dallas, huge result for Dak Prescott. James Harden going 2 for 8 for 7 points in Game 7, getting blown out in Denver. Just for all Dak's playoff failures, James Harden will forever be untouched in terms of.
He's in unique territory. Him and. Of course, Clayton Kershaw.
Clayton Kershaw, Connor Hellebuck is.
Hellebuck's redemption tour is now, but yes, Clayton Kershaw all time.
And Dalton had a first year. I mean, like for 5 straight years with the Bengals as well. One question I'm curious here about with Dak Prescott. Did the betting market move at all with Pickens going here?
No, just slightly around the edges. It just doesn't really move the needle. I think George Pickens is a very good wide receiver, but with Dallas, with their flaws, with the offensive line, younger and getting worse.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
I think they have upside, and we forget that it's only 2 years ago that they went into the playoffs as the second favorite in the NFC to make the Super Bowl. I think their defense getting Ezraku.
Injured last year.
Yeah, I think that would be solid.
I have a controversial take that I think outside of maybe the AFC West, I think the NFC East is going to be the most competitive
because of the
division.
Giants.
Well, in all seriousness, though, right? I mean, the Eagles are the defending Super Bowl champs. We think the Cowboys are going to be good. The Commanders have improved from last year's team, which was, got to the NFC Championship game. And then you've got the Giants who, adding Abdul Carter to what was already a pretty good defense. Right, as long as their offense is competent,
7-10.
they're going to be.
But they'll play in the divisional games. They're going to be playing them
They'll be
tough.
Scrappy. They're going to be. They're going to be like the stereotypical scrappy, tough out
in that
kind of thing. Like Daboll can coach, and they now have a competent quarterback. Whether it's Russ or Jameis or even Dart towards the end of the year, they're going to have a competent quarterback. They've got Malik Nabers. They're going to have a decent run game with Tracy and Scatterbo. They're going to have a pretty good defense. The Giants are going to be terrible. They're not going to be terrible this year.
Yep, NFC East will be better, but the best division in football still probably the AFC West, and they got a new member in Ashton Jeanty, and we heard from Ashton Jeanty on his pass catching.
I don't know how much you plan to have me in the passing attack, but I think it would be a great opportunities for me to catch the ball at the backfield and be an asset to this offense and just show off my versatility.
You said that you run like you're angry at the turf. I guess, what do you think about that statement? And I guess, how would you describe how you run?
I think that's a great description. I've got so many different ways to describe that I run, but I think my favorite, somebody said that, I was a rolling ball of knives.
By the way, I'm going to tell my daughters, I want you to marry somebody that looks at you the way that John Spytek looks at Ashton Jeanty. Do you see that whole clip? He's just staring at him with a big grin.
He didn't blink.
No.
I can't believe this.
Pete Carroll's looking at the audience, but Spytek is just all on Jeanty.
Yep.
Yeah.
This guy is going to save my
He's
life.
like, yes, 2,600 yards.
Rolling ball of knives is a magnificent.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's something you get out the way of.
Yeah, that's a fantasy football team name. I'm already calling it right now.
Lawrence
Jeanty in the first round.
Yep.
Lawrence's rolling ball of knives, how many passes do you think he's going to catch? What do you think his role will be as a pass catcher?
Putting in the fact that he should be their workhorse, putting in the fact that it's also Pete Carroll. I would say he's game to around 50, 60 catches as a rookie, and that puts him where we are. I think he's going to be in top tier running back one form in fantasy.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, think of their short area passing attack right now. Like, Brock Bowers, that's an important one. We're going to see what Jack Besh can do and Jacoby Myers, but Jeanty's right at the top of that list, impacting the short area pass catching.
He caught a lot of passes his sophomore year in college, not so much his junior year.
And he was good at it.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you think about the impact that Chip Kelly has. The run game has always been so important to Chip Kelly's offense, right? I mean, LaShawn McCoy was an absolute fantasy superstar in 2013 in Philadelphia under Chip Kelly as well. We know he's just going to get a massive target share, massive touch. He's just going to be the focal point of this offense, and they're going to try to get Geno on the move as well, which I think will help Ashton Jeanty as well. He's my number 4 quarterback, and I don't think that by the time we get to August, there's no way he goes outside the first round of any fantasy draft where people know what they're doing.
Indeed. Okay, let's jump to number 8, Malik Nabers, who post-draft has moved up from ahead of Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico, Brian Thomas Jr., and Matthew. He gets one of the larger quarterback upgrades of any wide receiver.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we just sort of talked about it, right? Russell Wilson's going to start. They're going to have Jackson Dart there. If something were to happen to Russ, Jameis Winston, no one focuses on one guy like famous Jameis. And so you think about Nabers, who last year was a top 6 wide receiver in points per game with the likes of, Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock throwing to him. He had a 35% target share. right? 170 targets, ranked second in the NFL, a 35% target share. And so if this guy was wide receiver 6 with bad quarterback play, they didn't add any target competition for him. They just improved his quarterback play, right? And so second year in the system, second year in the NFL for Malik Nabers, like there's an argument to be made. And there's so much competition, right, when you think about Chase and Jefferson. But, like, it would not shock me if we're a year from now, we're talking about Malik Nabers, number 1 wide receiver in fantasy.
I agree.
That's within the range of outcomes. I have him slotted where I have him here at number 8 overall, but my number wide receiver 4, just because the talent is so immense, the target share is so immense, and again, pretty good quarterback upgrade for him.
He's going to get a chance to get more of those deep balls instead of a lot of the catch and runs that he had. He's really going to get a chance to operate with that deep ball with a quarterback like Russell Wilson.
And for a while, we thought this was this is a team that Travis Hunter could be on this team. And it obviously didn't go that way, which only helps Malik Nabers. They brought back Darius Slayton. And like Cam Scatterbu will get some catches. Tyrone Tracy will get some catches. Theo Johnson year 2.
Sure.
Like Malik Nabers is
Wandale Robinson still wandering around.
Yeah, 4-yard catch after 4-yard catch. Malik Nabers is primed for an insane target share, which is a better quarterback play, like you said, Matthew. I agree with you. I think he has a really good shot to be wide receiver 1 or 2 this year.
Yep. All right, let's jump to 11 through 20. Headlined by Nico Collins, who was in the mix for Offensive Player of the Year before he did his hamstring last season. Brian Thomas Jr., huge surger. He is a guy who also could float in being a top 5 wide receiver.
Easy.
Brock Bowers, Christian McCaffrey on the comeback trail, Devin Achane, Drake London, the immortal, eternal Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, often a forgotten man, but still always elite, Lad McConkey heading into year 2, and then Trey McBride as tight end 2. But Lawrence, let's start with Devin Achane, who I think is one of the higher variance players in football this year. He has outcomes where it wouldn't be shocking if he was a top 2-3 running back in the league in fantasy, but also wouldn't be shocking if he was outside the top 15. So what are you expecting from Achane?
Yeah, it's all about efficiency when it comes to Devin Achane, because we know he's never going to be the guy to go out there and get you 20 carries per game. There may be times he touches the ball 20 times, but that'll also be through the receiving game. But 2 years in a row, this team has drafted running backs. Last season, they drafted Jalen Wright. This time, they bring in Ali Gordon, who's a bigger running back, and he's the guy who you could see him possibly coming in there and getting some goal line touches. So outside of that, you gotta love Devin Achane. Is at times last season, especially when Tua was out, he became their offense.
Yeah, when you get up this high, you have to nitpick a little bit. When I did this rankings update, I moved him just behind Christian McCaffrey. We're hearing nothing but great reports about Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason moves on to Minnesota. Yes, they drafted Jordan James. Yes, they have that Isaac Guerendo, but and neither of them are competition for CMC. As long as Christian McCaffrey is healthy, he's going to get a massive workload here. But for me, I guess you sort of figure that while CMC has injury concerns, so does Achane. Achane has missed time in his career, and I would argue that again, you have to nitpick here, because I love Achane, as you guys know. He's my running back 6. I'm at 15 overall. But the reason I put McCaffrey slightly over Achane is not only because they both have injury concerns, but then there's an injury concern to Tua, right? I mean, we saw how when Tua went down, Achane kind of went with him because he was so involved in the passing game last year. That playoff game, fantasy playoff game last year against Cleveland, where Achane should have had just a monster fantasy game, and he just didn't, because it was just a brutal game for the Dolphins offense on the road at Cleveland, a game in which they were still technically alive for the playoffs, that they were trying to win, and they just couldn't get anything going. And so somebody who had Achane in a dynasty league and lost because in part because of that game, you're worried about both the health of Tua and the health of Achane, whereas with McCaffrey, you're only worried about the health of McCaffrey. And I do think that, to your point, does Ollie Gordon steal a few goal line carries, or Jalen Wright? Feels like McDaniel wants to mix and match a little bit. So, again, at this level, you have to nitpick. That's why I put McCaffrey over Achane.
And rather than going out and getting a proven backup, their backup is Zach Wilson. Like, that was the guy they targeted as their backup. So if Tua gets hurt, there's not this, well, it'll be better this time because of this player. We can't sit here and confidently say that at all. And Teron Armstead retiring, I don't like this offensive line. I think Mike McDaniel is one of the best run game architects in the NFL. But and Achane at times can be all-line proof because he's so explosive and fast. But I do not like the look of this offensive line. I would have dropped him as well if I was doing rankings. There's just a weird feeling a little bit where he's a really good player.
Yeah.
But you're drafting for elite upside talent here, and the Dolphins have a lot of flaws around him that can affect his overall stock.
Yeah. So weird on the Zach Wilson thing, right? Why you don't go get – this isn't the right example because he's under contract, but, like, go get a Tyrod Taylor.
A veteran.
A guy that's just not going to sink your team if something happens to Tagovailoa.
It's very weird.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Or
just,
draft Shedeur Sanders, maybe something like that.
No, but, like, I mean, Zach Wilson has as much quote-unquote upside as Shedeur Sanders, I would argue, right? I mean, like, he still has the – there's a reason why the guy went, top 5 overall in the NFL.
But they need floor.
They need floor. They need they need a Tyrod Taylor. Yeah. They need some guy.
I guess the
like
issue
that.
is they thought they were doing that with Tyler Huntley, who came in with I think a bit more pedigree than he has right now, and just did not work. Let's jump to Lad McConkey. Lawrence, Lad McConkey moves up from number 23 to number 19 in the rankings, finished on an absolute tear. What do you think his ceiling is next season?
His ceiling is finishing inside one of the top 10 best receivers in fantasy. And the drafting of Trey Harris, I don't see that as a, knock to his target share. I see it as we have to find a guy that could play alongside Lad McConkey. I think that's what they had to do. Only 3 games last season where he had below a 20% target share. For a guy like Justin Herbert, you want a guy like McConkey who could play that slot, who has the ability to play outside as well. So for me, it's just how good can Lad McConkey get? And he was pretty damn good last year.
Can he be on a Mon-Ra St. Brown level player?
I was going to say, you could argue,
faster.
You could argue, right, he is faster. You could argue that he can be one of the best separators in the NFL this year, right? Is he going to be this insane after-the-catch threat? But one of the best separators is what his role is. And for Herbert, him being the number 1 guy there, I agree with Lawrence. I would say top 8, top 10 wide receiver outcome is in play.
Yeah, I think it's weird because I moved him ahead of T. Higgins, which I think is the one where people might question that as well. And I just feel like Higgins is somebody that always sort of gets banged up. He's missed 10 games the last two years, and so I moved McConkey ahead of him. But while I think I'm high on him, I'm wide receiver 11, 19 overall. He's going higher than that. Like in DraftKings, like if you're doing best ball drafts, he's going top 15 overall, which strikes me as like. That's really high for a guy that my only concern of McConkey, because I love him and like he's our guy and he's on my dynasty team thanks to Connor Rodgers. I would just say that I just don't know how much touchdown equity this guy has,
agree.
right? Like he's not a big red zone threat. They get in close.
They want to run the ball.
They want to run.
That's why Omarion Hampton's there now.
Exactly.
That's why Lad McConkey had to make those big plays like he did in that playoff game versus the Texans. That's what you get him for. So when you say like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, like Amon-Ra St. Brown will chip away at you, Lad McConkey will get one of those and just do it all in one catch.
Matthew, would you say that he's one of the guys with the biggest differentiation of full PPR and standard play?
Sure, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I would say so too.
Because again, like he's gonna get the volume there, right? Last year, 3 games. There were literally only 3 games where he had below a 20% target share. We like Trey Harris, but he's not going to command the the way that McConkey does. He is in fact McConkulous, first one of the year. But what I will say is that they want to run when they get in close. I feel like Harris is more of a potentially more of a red zone threat than McConkey is. Hampton is just just an absolute ridiculous
battering ram,
like just a massive human being. And like they still have Will Dissly there. They have my guy Aronde Gadsden, who's also going to be a nice red zone threat if he can make the team. We'll
Tyler
see.
Conklin's here.
Yeah, there you go.
They love tight ends.
Yeah, they really do.
They always have 3.
So, right. I mean, so obviously Harbaugh loves to run a lot of 12, and so that's my only concern of McConkey is just sort of the touchdown equity, how much he is like the Amon-Ra St. Brown comp. You're like, well, Amon-Ra got to like 8-9 touchdowns. Sure, but that's like a high-octane Lions offense that was passing a lot. That's not what the Chargers are going to do.
Indeed. All right, let's take another look at the 11 through 20 range. I think of some note here, Dallas Goedert restructured his deal. He'll remain with the Eagles, which affects A.J. Brown, number 18, to some extent. Matthew, do you think A.J. Brown is now at the point where just a little unsexy in drafts because he's been, an elite first, second round option for so long? And is there perhaps some value on him just because last year his numbers were suppressed by the Eagles just running the ball to a comical extent?
I think some value, but maybe not a ton because, I mean, I don't know that the Eagles are going to do anything different than what they did last year because it worked. You know what I mean? The fact is that what's going to hurt, what depresses what depresses A.J. Brown in drafts is exactly what you said. Like, sort of been there, done that. He's a very consistent player, but like there's not a sexiness, if you will, to him. He also didn't finish the season strong. Like, he was fairly quiet in the playoffs for the most part. They didn't need him to be. They didn't need him to have a monster playoff and whatever the stuff with the book and the whole thing. It
was like years ago at this point.
I know, but it was, right? I mean,
not that far removed from it.
I still feel like Nick Sirianni's like a 2-game losing streak from being on the hot seat.
I think the
Eagles
offense is just going to take what you allow them to have. Saquon Barkley had 25 carries and 57 yards in the Super Bowl, and they blew out the Chiefs.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, you want to load the box? The box. Okay, we got Devontae Smith, we got A.J. Brown, and now we got back Dallas Goedert.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. The only thing with A.J. Brown is that, and I don't want to speak it into existence, but Saquon Barkley was fully healthy all of last year, and not just with Saquon, who's dealt with his own injury concerns, but also just in general, running back is just unlikely to play. And I know he sat the final week, but he got through the first 16 games all healthy.
A.J. Brown plays more like the floor play than the upside play, right? You know what I mean? Like, assuming reasonable health, there's no way that A.J. Brown doesn't finish as a top 10 wide receiver this year, right? You know what I mean? He'll be there. He'll be in that 8 to 12 range. He's always going to be there.
He's a 1,400-yard receiver.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but there's a scenario where Malik Nabers is the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. Like, sure. There's more. It's more floor than upside, but he's ridiculous. He's great.
Yep. Let's jump to 21 through 30. Headlined by Josh Jacobs, another kind of unsexy pick, but just delivers every year when he's healthy. Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, who went a little under the radar. He ended the season on an absolute monstrous tear and looked like 2021 JT again. T. Higgins, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Chase Brown, Garrett Wilson, Kyren Williams, and then sneaking into the top 30, the often talked about on this show, Jayden Daniels. All right, we can clap Jayden Daniels on the 30. Well done, Jayden. Stuck into the top 30. Well done, mate.
God bless.
Offensive rookie of the year.
God bless.
All right, let's not talk about Jayden Daniels, Lawrence. Let's talk about...
Are you sure?
Yeah, we don't need to talk about him.
He's very good.
Yeah, he's great. So you know who else is great? Chase Brown, Lawrence, who is going to get a ton of work in that Bengals backfield, still largely unopposed in terms of work share.
Yeah, he's like the Jayden Daniels of running backs.
I don't know about that.
I think you talking mess on Jayden Daniels when you say that.
I'm kidding.
But Chase Brown's still really good, right? And we watched the whole NFL draft, looking and seeing when and if they would draft the running back, but no one of real significance that could threaten him to reaching his upside as a top 10 running back, which is what he was. He came into the league undersized, proved that he could hold up in pass protection, proved that you could play him in all 3 downs. And when you got this, if you're the running back attached to Joe Burrow in this Bengals offense, who we kind of think they're going to be in some shootouts again because they didn't do a lot on defense, you can expect a guy like Chase Brown to be very valuable from a PPR standpoint.
And it's sustainable. His last year in Illinois, that's what he did. He was the workhorse for that entire offense. The amount of carries he got, the rushing totals, and then obviously last year for the Bengals, he showed that it wasn't a fluke. He can carry it at the NFL level. And they're telling you this offseason that they believe it, because they drafted Taj Brooks at the end of day 3 of the draft, who is more of a kind of shifty in between the tackles runner without any breakaway speed. They bring back Samaje Perine on a really low veteran deal, like Zach Moss is there. There's no one in this backfield that should be eating into his...
Not like that.
No, not like that. So all the hype on Chase Brown, as long as he's healthy, should stay real.
Yeah, you know what? I moved him slightly over based on the NFL draft. He moved ahead of Kyren Williams, who prior to the NFL draft, I had Kyren ahead of Chase Brown. Again, limited backfield competition. You mentioned Zach Moss off the bad injury or Taj Brooks, whereas Kyren Williams has now both Blake Corum and Jarquez Hunter, right? And last year, the Rams were 32nd. Literally no team was worse than the NFL in terms of running back target share. They don't throw to their running backs. So Kyren Williams desperately needs like massive rushing volume to get the kind of production that he's had. And so I'm a little bit nervous. Like they tend to run when they get in close, but now they just added Davante Adams. And who's better in the red zone, especially from 10 to 5 yards out, than Davante Adams? They're going to be running slants all day.
Yeah, and they have a couple tight ends now.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, we always talk about this level. You have to nitpick. So I moved Brown ahead of Kyren Williams. Over the final 8 games last year, he was the 4th best running back in fantasy football. And most importantly, I think to the Bengals brass, proved he could be an every down back.
All right. Well, speaking of Kyren, you mentioned 4th-round rookie Jarquez Hunter. We heard from Sean McVay talking about Hunter.
And he can hit home runs for you, too. You give him a vertical seam, he's got the ability to run away from you. I mean, some of the metrics that we have on him are really impressive. But, I texted Kyren how excited I am for him to be able to get a chance to learn from him and be around him. And you talk about the epitome of a pro's pro, the way that he goes about his business day in and day out, and Kyren Williams. And it's the same thing. He'll get a chance to see how Blake Corum moves. What does Ronnie Rivers, how does he do his thing? Cody Schrader into his 2nd year. So we were excited about him, and obviously Les and his group had a real appreciation for him. And then once the coaches laid eyes on him, there was a collective buy-in.
Wow. Ronnie Rivers getting a shout-out.
Yeah. You got to show love to all the guys.
Ronnie Rivers.
How is he still on the team?
Matter of fact, shout out to Todd Gurley, too.
Sean McVay and Les Snead matching outfits there.
Unity in Rams house.
Yes.
Is this the year, Connor, that Kyren Williams finally gets his workload eaten into?
No, unless he gets hurt. Stop believing this. It's ridiculous. I fell for it last year, and I said never again, like the Alamo. It's just no way. It's not. Listen, he's a 4th-round pick. Hunter's a good player, but they keep drafting the same type of guy just because they're worried about Kyren getting hurt, which he has gotten banged up in the past. But that was the thought with Blake Corum, and that's the thought. And Blake Corum was a guy that came into the NFL banged up as well. And now with Jarquez Hunter, who's a good player and in between the tackles, tough runner. But it's not like they took someone that is so out of the range of skill sets.
Sure.
Like we took this guy that runs a 4.3 and we need him on the field and this look to run a wheel route. They didn't take that guy. So no, this is Kyren Williams' offense until he's hurt.
Yeah, but would you argue this? I prefer Hunter and Corum to Taj Brooks and Zach Moss.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so my point is that, again, you're having a nitpick. That's why I put Chase Brown over.
I would have done that as well.
Over Kyren Williams.
Yeah, I would have
done
that.
But I agree with you. The workload's going to be there. He's still going to be a good running back.
Between Chase Brown now and Kyren Williams is going to probably end up being the better value now because he's going after Chase Brown now in these.
Last year he fell too.
Yeah, so
I know no one likes Kyren Williams.
Like Kyren Williams, I was just in the draft. He went in the 4th round. We talking about redraft. That's probably your RB1 in fantasy in the 4th round.
For sure.
Yep. Let's take another look at 21 through 30. Lawrence, I saw your eyes light up when I mentioned our man Jonathan Taylor, who shares my profile picture on the platform formerly known as X. He was magnificent.
Friend of the podcast.
Magnificent. Ever since he dropped the touchdown running into the end zone in Denver, he was magnificent down the stretch. And if he replicates that, then he's a top 5 running back.
Easily. And I know for right now we say, Saquon, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then you take Ashton Jeanty. There's one more guy I'd take in front of Ashton Jeanty, and it's Jonathan Taylor. There was no better running back in fantasy from weeks 13 to the end of the fantasy football season than Jonathan Taylor, and that included a 200-yard rushing game. Now, we're talking about an offense that had Anthony Richardson in and out the lineup. You had Flacco in there, so Coach didn't really know what they was doing, but once Jonathan Taylor came back from that injury, he looked like that MVP candidate from a couple of years ago. And 26 years old, I think he still got that in the tank. So I think he's a guy who could get back to being a top 5 running back.
Look, there's no question he's got the talent. He's got the workload opportunity there. We love Jonathan Taylor. He's been on the show many, many times.
Twice.
Multiple times. Multiple times.
That's showbiz.
Many times. Yeah.
Hyperbole and showbiz is good.
Multiple times, Jay.
Yeah, no.
But two is many, too.
Yes,
that's up there for,
exactly.
All right, I'll pay it.
Yeah.
Technically correct.
Yeah.
We've never lied on this show.
Yeah, come on. He's like Debo.
Yeah.
Right.
But I get all that. It's certainly within the range of outcomes. I guess for me, I feel like Jeanty has more passing game upside than Taylor does. I don't know what this Colts team is going to be, whether it's Daniel Jones.
That's
or
what
Anthony
scares me.
Richardson,
It better be Jonathan Taylor.
And I just, no, I agree. I'm with you. That's, you'd think, but, and yes, he was awesome down the stretch, especially again after he dropped that touchdown at the goal line there. But I feel like any of the from week blank on stats are skewed by
small sample.
It's small sample size, and he had that one crazy 200-yard, 3-touchdown game or whatever it was.
Against like a fake Titans team.
Got to be good to get that, though.
I'm with you. Like, and I will say this: I do think he's going to be a value because just people are sort of over Jonathan Taylor. He's not like a sexy name. The Colts are a small market team. Blah blah blah.
Or he gets hurt and you're away for 3 weeks.
But there's no question he'll be a value this year.
Yep. I'm buying JT stock. I believe in Jonathan Taylor. Believe in Shane Steichen. I don't really believe in Anthony Richardson, but there's still upside there.
I believe they exist.
They do exist.
I believe in you, Anthony Richardson.
They absolutely.
We not done.
He's also been on the show, Anthony Richardson, but not many times. Just once.
Just once. Okay, since there isn't really an off-season in the NFL, stay dialed in with us on the NBC Sports Now channel. Join Dan Patrick, Mike Florio, Chris Sims, and our crew at the Happy Hour for more insight on the biggest news and stories around the league. For more details, visit NBCSports.com/now. More rankings after the break. Breece Hall, Rashee Rice, and many more.
I think mentally he's in a good place. But I would say that we have 3 running backs on this team that we're going to utilize as much as possible. They're all big men. They can run. They're violent. They're physical. So I think once we get a chance to get the players in and see exactly like how they operate, I think every player is going to be happy with the way that we go about this offense. And I think he's going to be one of them.
All right, Sarah and Glenn talking about Breece Hall coming off a rough season, but still scope for him to bounce back. We look at 31 through 40, headlined by new LA Ram Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill looking for his own bounce back season.
Friend of the podcast.
Yeah, friend of the podcast. One-time friend of the podcast. JSN.
Also a friend of the podcast.
Also a friend of the podcast.
Yes,
also
absolutely.
a friend of mine as he had a starring role in Matthew getting absolutely screwed at the buzzer in our head-to-head matchup in fantasy last season. Marvin Harrison Jr., 34. Terry McLaurin. Breece Hall, who will talk about. Mike Evans, another eternal feature in the top 40. Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP. DK Metcalf, and then Rashee Rice, who is going to be one of the highest variance players in the NFL this season. But let's start off with Breece, Connor. So a lot of chat from Aaron Glenn. We got a lot of chat about running back workload in the offseason, but how many carries do you think Breece is going to be averaging next season?
That's what they're going to try to figure out because Breece never looked right last year. He wasn't available during OTAs for the most part. It felt like something was wrong then. And then during the season.
Maybe he was in Egypt.
He was not. They did have videos of him on the sideline.
The thing is, Connor, that he did look right sometimes.
That's the thing. Like the Steelers game.
I remember texting you during the second Bills game, like, wow, Breece looks really good.
Right.
It's like, this is just randomly just
It was
given
a
weeks.
flip a coin kind of season for Breece. And the only thing I could say from that answer with Aaron Glenn is he immediately pivoted to the 3 running backs they have. And another portion of that interview, they asked him about Garrett Wilson. And all he did was talk glowingly about Garrett Wilson. He wasn't like, well, we have Alan Lazard and we have Malachi Corley.
Man, I believe what he's saying.
Me too.
Although, could it be that he's watched Alan Lazard and
Probably.
Let me ask you one quick question. Opening day, is Breece Hall on the Jets?
Yeah, at this point. I think it would have happened during the draft.
Okay.
I think so.
Is there a chance that Breece Hall's inconsistency last year was partially he wasn't fully healthy and partially the offense was a disaster?
It was, but partially he's got to keep the ball off the ground too.
Yeah.
Aaron Glenn's not going to deal with that.
I'm with you, but like
you're right though.
But I just felt like that offense was a mess. And worse, that not only was it a mess, but it was an inconsistent mess because it was Hackett, and then they got rid of Hackett, and Rodgers has a big say, and the whole thing was just a effing disaster. It was. And it's why they've got a whole new regime there, and who knows how. And so here's Breece Hall. Maybe he's not being used correctly, and he's not fully healthy, and it's just the offensive line was a disaster, which they've made improvements to that. Like, am I crazy to think Breece Hall could actually be a value this year?
You're not, because number one, this offensive line is really good on paper. Yeah. Like after taking Armand Membu, this is a complete offensive line, and Mason Taylor. They didn't have a tight end that could block last year, so now they have a tight end that can block. So okay, you feel good about that. The play calling has to be better. Like we've never seen Tanner Angstrom call plays, and we know he's better than Daniel
Doesn't matter.
It does not matter. So that's a positive. They're going to run the ball a ton. A ton, because Justin Fields is back there. Yeah. And Justin Fields can throw a lot to the running back when that first read isn't there as well.
For sure, and we've seen this so many times that a mobile quarterback, especially when they're running RPOs, just opens up lanes for running backs.
Which didn't exist last year.
Right, exactly. And so...
One last thing schematically, because of Rodgers' Achilles, I'm assuming, they ran out of shotgun or the pistol, it felt like 99% of the time.
Sure.
Getting Fields under center is going to be so good for Breece or whoever the running back is. That demolished the Jets' running game last year before they ever had a chance.
Yep. I remember, Lawrence, that Breece Hall game in Denver when he did his ACL. And I think just before that, he ripped off like a 77-yard touchdown. And I remember when he ripped off that run, I was thinking, like, this guy's going to be the number one running back in fantasy next year because that's the level of player that he is. And do you think maybe it's just gone too far, that it's just been a couple strange years?
I think he stood that good because we saw at the end of last season, not last season, but the season before last in the snow when he took 30-something touches and made almost 200 yards. I think the thing that we don't mention enough is that the two guys, and I say two guys, and Aaron Glenn talked about him, Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, those are good young running backs.
They like Davis a lot. Yeah.
Davis is really good. Couldn't even believe the Jets picked another guy because it was like, he's good. But, I think that part has to be mentioned too. So they will use them to the extent of how much. That's the part we're trying to figure out. But I do believe him when he says we're using all three running backs.
Yeah, hard to imagine him getting the kind of workload that we've seen previously. But I also don't think Breece Hall's a guy that needs a massive workload to provide, significant fantasy value.
Yep. All right, let's jump to number 40, Matthew. Rashee Rice, who moved up from 47 to 40, jumped ahead of Xavier Worthy. What's the reason for that?
Well, it's a couple of reasons why. Number one, so everything we keep hearing out of Kansas City, we've heard it from Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and just everything we hear from the beats is that Rashee Rice looks like Rashee Rice. Looks like he's fully recovered from the injury again, he got injured very early in the season, so he's had a full year basically, or he'll have had a full year by the time the season starts. So first off, you feel really good about just sort of where the health is. And the other concern on Rashee Rice was, of course, he's got this legal issue off the field. There's going to be a trial at some point, and it doesn't look good for him. And so the thought process is, well, he's going to get suspended. And I think that's still the case, but the way the NFL usually works, almost always, is that they won't suspend a player until their legal situation is solved. So, in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. So Rashee Rice is going to get his day in court, and then if and when he is found guilty, then, and depending on the severity of the crime and what he is found guilty of, once a jury of his peers have heard all the evidence, blah, 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 then they're going to the NFL. I'm not trying to dismiss the seriousness of the allegation, but just that the way that process is going to work is that once a jury has heard all the evidence and made a ruling, then the NFL will make a determination as to whether or not he should be suspended, and if so, for how long. And right now it feels like that case keeps getting kicked, and so it feels like that case may not be heard until 2027, 2026, which means Rashee Rice will be available for all of 2025. And you just saw those numbers on the screen there. Just 3 full games prior to his injury last year, 34% target share. He was averaging over 21 fantasy points per game. He was the second best wide receiver in fantasy. Now, we've seen the emergence of Xavier Worthy. But by the way, Travis Kelce continues to decrease his in-season usage because they want to save him for the postseason. So Rashee Rice is either 1A or 1B compared to what we think of Worthy with one of the best quarterbacks and offenses in football.
If we find out today that we know he won't get suspended until 2026, where would he go in drafts right now? Because right now it's looking fourth round he's going. Where would he, because like you said, the 3 games, 34% target share, you saw it immediately in week 1, like Patrick, he was open. I was like, this dude going to have 1,500 yards this year.
Now, so I'm at wide receiver 21 because, again, they do have Xavier Worthy. They brought back Hollywood Brown. I think he has more target competition this year than he did in week 1 of last year, where it was
Hollywood wasn't playing.
Hollywood wasn't playing.
Worthy wasn't what he is now.
Right. So I'd argue and they do like to spread it around, but crazy talented player who clearly has a rapport with Mahomes and fully healthy. So I'm at 21, and that ranking assumes that there's a very limited chance that he gets suspended this season.
Yeah, offshoot of all that, I think Patrick Mahomes is going to have a monster bounce-back season. I think that just with Rashee Rice back, with Worthy developing, with the offensive line, that's some young guys on that line who get better, I think that he looks more like the MVP level Patrick Mahomes, the fantasy monster Patrick Mahomes, and these two blah years in a row statistically from Mahomes, even though he did win the Super Bowl in the first year and then made it back in the second year. I think Mahomes is going to bounce back.
But I also think, we've talked about this all the time on the show, that I think people sometimes in fantasy analysis just forget we're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with people that have egos and tempers and, and emotions. And so Patrick Mahomes, the last time we saw Patrick Mahomes, he had literally the worst game of his career.
He was embarrassed.
On the biggest stage possible. And so if you don't think Mahomes is coming into the season with a chip on his shoulder saying, like, okay, I ain't that guy.
Right. He done cut the mohawk off, new haircut.
He is ready.
Yep.
He's ready. I know the kid in Nebraska's got to keep up.
If I see that boy cut, if he get the same fade that Patrick Mahomes got now,
we're gonna have a conversation.
Come on, man. Yeah. Come on, dog.
All right.
That kid.
All in Mahomes, all in Chiefs. All right, 41 through 50. Tetairoa, McMillan, T-Mac, he headlines at a 41. James Cook, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara is 44. Xavier Worthy, we spoke about, 45. DJ Moore, Travis Hunter, George Kittle, tight end 3, fresh off his extension. The Chubbler, Chuba Hubbard is at 49. Top 50 for the Chubbler. Unbelievable. What a rise for the Chubbler.
Chubby Magic.
Chubby Magic, yes. La Magica continues. Amari and Hampton rounds out the top 50. Lawrence, let's talk about DJ Moore. Who has a bit more competition in terms of pass catches, but he also has what we think is going to be a better offensive mind guiding the offense and a much, much improved offensive line.
Yeah, he had 140 targets last season, right? So it's like how much down does he come from that number? Obviously, it's going to be something, but it'll be something to see with all those new young weapons that they have.
I moved him down a little bit. I moved him, I had him at 35. I moved him to 46 overall. I think added competition from Colston Loveland. I think Adunze makes another leap. I think they're going to want to run the ball under Ben Johnson. And the other thing is that so much of his yards last season, DJ Moore, came after the catch and on screens. And I feel like that's what Luther Burden does as well. Yeah. And so I'm not saying Luther Burden's going to replace DJ Moore.
Got a lot of
obviously
comps
not.
to him.
But exactly. My point is that I think at least some of the stuff that they run for DJ Moore, especially some of that easy stuff, is the kind of stuff that goes to Luther Burden because, hey, this is an easy way to get the kid in the offense.
Yep. Let's talk about some of these rookies, namely T-Mac, and we heard from T-Mac talking about his bond with Bryce Young.
Yeah, I mean, we both from Cali. Got the chance to play against each other in high school. Just been seeing each other's growth as far as men and football players, and just as a receiver, it's a compliment to have a quarterback that trusts in you already. And at the end of the day, I still got to come in here and earn his respect, earn his trust. But he believes in me, and that's all I need in my quarterback.
Connor, how do you think that the Bryce Young that we saw at the end of the season, how does his game complement T-Mac's?
Perfectly. They needed a contested catch winner. Like, hey, this guy's covered, but I can throw the ball up and he'll make a play for me. Bryce Young just really hasn't I think they were hoping Leggett would be that guy, and Leggett had some injuries last year. But T-Mac is going to get those targets, and he's a guy that's taken advantage of them every step of the way throughout his entire life.
And I think having him on the outside opposite Xavier Leggett sort of opens up this offense. Yep. You still have Thielen in the slot. By the way, if you want to see the definitive Xavier Leggett interview, go to NBCSports.com. I sat down with the X-Man from Churchill Downs, the definitive Xavier Leggett. I really got in. I peeled back the layers of the onion, Jay. I was like, I ate some raccoon, some squirrel, 100%. I'm like a young Barbara Walters out here. He was crying.
Okay.
We got into his childhood, his dreams.
We're going to hit our last break. All right, last call is next. Yeah, real Frost Nixon type situation.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to hit our last break. Last call next. Early leans for betting offensive player of the year. DraftKings Sportsbook is your home for live betting, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Just download the app and use the promo code BERRY when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook.
The crown is yours!
The crown is yours. All right, let's take a look at odds for Offensive Player of the Year. Saquon Barkley, plus 650 to go back-to-back. Jamar Chase, plus 950. Jahmyr Gibbs, plus 950. And then Bijan Robinson, 16-1. Former winner, 2020, I believe, Derrick Henry, is 18-1. And my pick, gentlemen, is the guy who is the same price as Derrick Henry. That's Justin Jefferson, who's 18-1. So have a little rule. Justin Jefferson can never be 18-1 to win Offensive Player of the Year. His past 3 healthy seasons, he has gone 108 catches for 1616 receiving yards, 128 for 1809, 103 for 1533. Think Justin Jefferson, he just has the scope to get to those 1800-yard type of levels like he did a couple years ago when he won this award. Lawrence, what's your pick?
For me, I'm going to go with Bijan Robinson. Look, he had a career year last year, is only getting better. I think the Falcons are going to have a top 5 offense in the NFL this season, so I'm going to take the best player on that offense because now they got their quarterback in Michael Penix. Give me Bijan.
I'll take Jahmyr Gibbs, and I know he's near the top of the list, but it's still plus 950. He's an incredible talent both as a pass catcher and a runner, and this is probably the year where they lean on Gibbs more than they ever have. It's time. The offensive line is still going to be really good after they restocked it during the NFL draft.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're saying how Jefferson should never be 18-1. How's Chris McCaffrey 22-1?
Oh,
I get it. It's
health.
It's the health. He just needs to stay healthy.
Right.
If Chris McCaffrey stays healthy this entire year, how's he not in the conversation for Offensive Player of the Year? He's as good as any player in the NFL. It's just a question about health. Talking to sources around the 49ers, they feel really good about where he is health-wise. We've seen him stay healthy before. The Niners need him.
So that team, he gets the credit.
Yeah, exactly. He gets the credit, and more importantly, I think the trade of Jordan Mason, I think, is an indication of how good they feel about where CMC is in terms of his health. So, yeah, give me Chris McCaffrey at 22-1.
I like that because the thing is when you're betting a price like 22-1, you don't care if he gets hurt because you're riding the tail outcomes of if he does stay healthy. It's basically like if he's a 50% chance to stay healthy, is he a 10% chance to win the award? And I would say that he is. So 22-1 implies like a 4.5% chance. One long shot I'll give out, Brian Thomas Jr., 35-1. Here's a chance to lead the NFL in targets.
Oh.
That how they say it now?
That's how Liam Cohen says it. I think that's the cool way to say it now. Is it,
he can't wait for the season to start, Liam Cohen, just to get away from that. He's like, I gotta get away.
I think he should lean into it. I think he should lean into it. I think he should start every press conference with that. I think Jackson DeVille and him should do a video together. Hey, it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Lawrence, Connor, and Jay, I'm Matthew. Happy birthday, Beth Berry. We love you. We will see you tomorrow, or actually next week. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.